Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's conversation, Programmatic SEO Unleashed, Automating Content at Scale. My name is Daniel Anzueto. I welcome all pronouns, and I serve as a Community Engagement Manager at Startout. I'm excited to welcome you to today's event. If it's your first time attending one of our workshops, welcome, and know that Startout's mission is to increase opportunity and success for LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. I'm excited to welcome back one of our hosts for this session, Ryan Ward from Rex Marketing and CX. The floor is yours, Ryan.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Danny. And thanks everyone for attending. Excited to talk to you all today about PSEO or pragmatic SEO for scaling content. So just to go ahead and jump in, I'm going to preface this is a bit more of a advanced session. So if you're new to SEO or just starting to prioritize this for your business, this might be a bit advanced and a bit over the basics. So just keep that in mind. But just a brief intro of myself and what I do. So I'm based in Austin. I'm a two-time founder. I was the founder of an ed tech company previously, exited in 2021, and then a couple of years later, actually ended up co-founding Rex Marketing and CX. I focus in the areas of growth marketing and SEO in terms of my expertise. And come from the healthcare and education space for the most part, but have consulted and worked with companies across various industries. Um, in terms of what we do at Rex Marketing, so we focus on early stage companies and early stage startups. The vast majority of our clients are in the healthcare space, given that's our expertise, but we do work with other industries as well. So, depending on what it is you do and what your business is, happy to chat with you and share some insight and see if we can help. But we focus in the areas of SEO, content marketing, content strategy, design and development, marketing ops, scaling revenue, basically all of that. So if you're looking to learn more, feel free to reach out. Like I said, we work with early stage companies, so pricing can be pretty reasonable depending on what we're doing and what we're helping you with. But yeah, feel free to reach out if any of that's of interest. But just to jump into the content that we have for today. So I'm going to refer to programmatic SEO as PSEO. That's typically how it's referred to. So if I say PSEO, that's what I'm referring to. So we're going to first jump into what is PSEO, explain kind of what it means, how it can be beneficial for your business, the core components that make it up, how we can use it for keyword research, data collection, automating page generation. We're going to be looking at template design, on-page SEO optimization, and then you're going to wrap up with some best practices and tools to help you if you're looking to implement this as part of your SEO and growth strategy. So first, just jumping into what is PSEO. So what it is in a nutshell is using automation and structured data that you provide to it to generate optimized pages for your website at scale. The real goal behind PSEO is trying to capture long tail keyword traffic. That's where a vast majority of traffic will come from, and that's really the value behind this. It can be pretty time consuming to go through and make hundreds of pages to target different long tail keywords for your industry. So by utilizing PSEO, you're able to do it faster, quicker, and launch a number of pages at scale without having to create a page one by one. To give you some examples of like what this could look like, one that's like a pretty common example would be like a travel company where they have numerous destination pages or city pages. And you might be asking, how did they create all these pages for all these different cities, all these different countries or locations or destinations? They're utilizing PSEO as part of their growth strategy. So basically, if you can think of like that instance, if you are a company where you're going to be generating, numerous location pages, property pages, all kinds of things like that, you're going to be wanting to utilize PSEO to move faster and quicker. So why does it matter? First off, 70% of search traffic comes from long tail keywords. Like I just mentioned, if you were to go through and create, imagine like a company like Zillow or, Yelp, where they have numerous addresses or locations or what have you. It is not feasible for a company of that size or any company to go through and create pages one by one for each location or each hotel or each, whatever the case may be. They're going to utilize automation to scale page creation and ultimately scale their organic traffic faster. Um, it goes without saying that creating these pages manually and creating this content manually can be slow and expensive in terms of time cost. Um, by automating these processes, which we'll be getting into and talking about what that looks like, you're going to be able to move faster, generate more traffic faster, um, and capture more long tail keyword traffic. Really, the power behind PSEO is scale, consistency, and discoverability. Moving faster, creating consistent content that can be replicated across numerous pages, and discoverability. And we'll be talking about this in deeper detail, but when I mention consistency, think about a page like, I'm sure we've all gone to Zillow at some point or apartments.com. Whenever they generate a new listing or a new location, they have those set fields or that set text that's going to be auto-populated. That's the same across each page. The information is unique on each page, but it follows a templated design and templated content. So that's what I mean when I say consistency. Um, but just to call out some examples of companies that do this well, I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with Zapier. It's a great, powerful tool, and I actually recommend it as part of your toolkit for PSEO. But Zapier is a automation tool that people use to connect different uh, platforms and softwares to one another. Uh, Zapier is an example of where they've created thousands of integration pages by utilizing PSEO. So if you were to search, integrate MailChimp with HubSpot or what have you, basically, if there's any sort of software that doesn't have a native integration, they've created numerous pages to capture that traffic of people who are searching for integration options between two softwares. I mentioned this one already, but Yelp is another good example. So Yelp has automated business and location pages. So when people are searching for businesses within their locale, different types of businesses, Yelp has created these pages uh, in an automated fashion, in a templated fashion, so that people can easily find them and they capture that traffic for what people are searching for. And then finally, another good example is Airbnb. So if people are looking for rentals in specific locations, destinations, what have you, I'm sure we've all done a search for a vacation spot. We're looking for a place to stay, and you'll see that Airbnb is one of the top search results for the location search. This is an example of PSEO, where they've created pages that target these different locations, no matter where people might be searching for when they're looking for accommodation. So looking at the core components of PSEO, and we're going to delve into each of these deeper, but all these work together to build out like a successful PSEO strategy. So first, looking at keyword research and scaling it, data collection and structuring your data, automated page generation, looking at template-based content design, and then finally utilizing automation for on-page SEO optimization. So first, looking at keyword research. So when it comes to keyword research, hopefully if you're attending this session, since it's a bit more advanced, you've done keyword research to some capacity or in some fashion. Um, as you probably know, if you have, it can be time consuming to find all the potential long tail keyword opportunities for your business. And you're going to be taking time, you're going to be kind of conducting research, finding keywords that have low keyword difficulty, high traffic, so on and so forth. But by utilizing PSEO, we're going to be able to target a numerous long tail keywords versus you having to create an individual page for each one you're trying to target without doing each one by one. Again, hopefully we're all aware, but long tail keywords are generally speaking much higher intent in terms of search queries. Versus someone searching for running shoes. If someone's searching for running shoes for working moms or running shoes for uh, college students or whatever the case may be. Those are higher intent, more specific in terms of search terms. So if you have that type of product and if you have that offering that someone's searching for, and you're able to get in front of them at the top of search results, you're much more likely to capture that purchase or capture that sale or booking or whatever your conversion is that you're trying to achieve. You're going to be able to uh, be at the top of those search results and ideally get that higher intent search query. Um, Again, I've said this already, but the power behind PSEO is capturing traffic for these various long tail, high intent queries faster without having to create each page individually. When it comes to the keyword research, the best way that I'd say to do this, and there's a number of tools out there, I always recommend SEMrush or Ahrefs. They're, in my opinion, kind of the gold standards for SEO research, tracking, auditing. Just their product suite is the most advanced, in my opinion, and the most diverse. So how I would go about actually scaling keyword research is leveraging these tools. Obviously, you need to have one of these tools in place, whether it's SEMrush or Ahrefs or some other tool that maybe you have in your tech stack. You need to have some sort of tool in place to effectively conduct keyword research. Um, that's just a matter of what you need in the basics. So how I would think about it is whatever your product offering is or um, whatever your solution is or whatever you're trying to do with your business, I would first try to locate the long tail keyword that you're looking to target potentially. Like the example I just mentioned, running shoes. Maybe you're a running shoe company and you're going to look for the various long tail keyword opportunities that are out there. The way I would go about doing this and identifying these initial keywords we want to go after is we're going to first want to locate like one long tail keyword. Maybe I go through and I identify uh, running shoes for college students. Um, I might go through and look and see if there's opportunity and we see there's traffic there. We might want to go through and look for running shoes for college students at the University of Texas or University of Florida. Maybe, and this is just obviously I can't speak for your business and what it is your product is and what people would want to be wanting to accomplish with your product or the ideal audience for your product would be. But let's say, for example, with this one, this company sells college branded running shoes. They have logos, maybe they're the school colors, um, as a high level example. This would be an opportunity for them to create pages that target college students across these various campuses and for ever the campuses they're looking to target. So maybe they want to create a page for University of Texas, University of Florida, University of California. So this would be one example of how a company would want to leverage this. Maybe they have all these opportunities. Um, Once you've identified these, you're going to be want to work in some spreadsheets. So look and identify the terms that would be dynamic within your search query. So let's say, for example, in this one I'm describing right now, running shoes for college students at blank. Um, the blank, the University of Texas or whatever the university would be or the college campus would be, that would be your dynamic term that's going to be changing between each long tail keyword term. So I would go through and using that spreadsheet, create a list of all of the colleges or the locations you're wanting to target, and include those in a column as the or a row, however you want to design it. But that's how I'd go about scaling the keyword research, finding that first initial long tail keyword opportunity. And then, it's as easy as, if we're going to use college campuses, finding a list of college campuses we want to target, copying and pasting them, obviously checking to make sure that grammatically they're formatted correctly, but starting with that and using that dynamically into our long tail keywords. I'll get into how that's going to be plugged in to your pages, But that's the initial step of the process is identifying those long tail keywords and deciding what that dynamic keyword is going to be throughout them. Again, I have an example here just to hit it home, but say if you have, best blank product in blank city. The product and city would be the dynamic fields you'd want to pull into each page. So obviously this can vary greatly depending on what you're selling, what your product is, what your solution is. So you're going to want to think about what are the long tail keywords that we want to go after when it comes to this strategy. So once we've gone through and I decided what those keywords would be, there's a number of ways you can go about filling in these columns or filling in these rows into your spreadsheet or whatever the data platform will be or the data provider will be. Depending on what it is, it's going to vary again depending on what your strategy is and what it is you're trying to produce pages for. But you're going to want to try to gather these large data sets, like whether it's university names or addresses or whatever the case may be, through APIs, scraping, maybe open data like copy and pasting, like I just said. An example of APIs would be Zillow plugs into the MLS, which is I believe stands for multiple listing service that is used by realtors. They plug into the MLS API and are able to generate these pages based off of listings that realtors put into the MLS. That's an example of API. An example of scraping would be like in the example I just used. Maybe you find a directory of university names or a listing of different university names, and you can scrape that data and plug it into your spreadsheet or whatever, like or your Airtable that you're going to be using. If you're not familiar with Airtable, it's a cloud-based uh, like data collection type of service, like with different spreadsheets that you can pull into different fashions. So maybe you're going to scrape it and add that into your Airtable sheet. Or maybe you just find open data on the internet that you can easily copy and paste and move in. Whatever the case may be, you're going to want to, depending on what you're targeting, you're going to want to find this data, whether it's finding it through API, scraping, or finding it in open data. Um, you then want to make sure you normalize and structure the data appropriately. So again, if you're pulling in this data from, say, a spreadsheet or from API or what have you, you want to make sure that the data that's being pulled in is structured properly. And when I say that, I mean like grammar, capitalization. Think about how you want it to pull in appropriately to fill in your template pages. So I always say a good rule of thumb is just parse through it quickly, find places where maybe it needs to be structured or normal or um, corrected or changed depending on how you're trying to use it. But making sure that you're going to go through, and I always say automation is great, but you need to have that final look over with your own human eyes to make sure that it's going to pull in properly. Um, Again, some examples of this could be pulling in restaurant data. Maybe you found a list of restaurants or a list of hotels. Like I said with the Zillow example, like we're using the MLS API to pull in real estate data. There's a number of ways to go about this, but you just, again, depending on what your product is and what your solution is, it's going to vary greatly depending on if you're going to use an API or just scrape the data for your data collection. So now that we have this data, we've identified the long tail keywords we want to go after. We've found our data sets. We've gotten those into some sort of provider, whether it's an Excel doc, an Airtable sheet, or something along those lines. We now look at the uh, creation of these pages from an automated fashion. So when it comes to, first off, looking at your CMS. So I usually recommend if you're wanting to implement PSEO as part of your strategy, you want to look at either using WordPress or Webflow. You can use another solution, but those are the easiest and by far the best solutions, especially if you're a small team, you're scrappy, you're moving quickly. WordPress and Webflow are the most user-friendly and provide the capabilities that we need here. Um, you're going to want to have one of those in like a CMS in place, similar to these, or maybe a custom built solution, depending on how your site is, to build these pages dynamically. You could also use custom scripts if you're going to be using a custom script like with Python or something to get to build these together. But again, highly recommend WordPress or Webflow to have the CMS in place. You want to also ensure that you're pulling in unique meta tags and headers and schema markup for each page. So again, pulling in dynamic titles, dynamic uh, uh, meta descriptions, dynamic headers, all of that needs to be pulled in appropriately for the data that you've collected. Uh, the one thing that I sometimes see when people start doing this is that the content they're pulling into each page is not unique enough. So make sure that the content that's being pulled in is unique, and unique enough for each page. So for an example, like with a real estate listing, like you're going to pull in a different address for each listing, a different description of the property on each listing. It's going to look basically unique. There is some text in the templates that is going to be similar, like maybe your CTA or section like headers that break out different sections or things like that. But you want to make sure that the content that you're pulling into these pages is unique enough. So that could be like unique paragraphs, unique description text, unique pricing, whatever the case may be. You want to make sure that's unique. The reason being is that if these pages look too similar to one another, you actually can hurt yourself in terms of SEO performance. Google will negative it'll doesn't there will be a negative impact on your SEO performance because Google does not reward companies who, copy and paste or spam content. Even though you are creating dynamic pages and there are elements that are different, if they are not different enough, they will be flagged by Google as being duplicate content and flagged as spam content, which will hurt your domain authority and your domain ranking. So, again, some examples would be product names, description, property descriptions, whatever the case may be, but make sure you're pulling in enough unique text for each page to make it diverse and not be flagged as duplicate content. Again, an example of this would be like Zillow, where they're generating multiple listings and they're pulling in product descriptions, addresses, square footage, locations, all those different things dynamically. So like if you were to compare one page to another, you're going to see there's similar elements in terms of structure and breakdown of different sections, but the content that's within each is basically completely unique. Um, Looking at template design. So the reason I recommend WordPress and Webflow is that they're both extremely powerful in terms of their template abilities. So within Webflow's CMS, you're able to create template pages and pull in dynamic content from your CMS entries. Very similar with WordPress. You're able to create templated pages depending on your theme and what theme you're using in WordPress, but you can create templated pages that pulls in content dynamically. Templates is the way to go, especially if you're a small team and a scrappy team and you're not a tech person. I highly recommend Webflow or WordPress for this strategy. If you are a developer or you have technical expertise, you probably can go about this another way with creating custom scripts and doing this differently with a custom built site. But again, highly recommend those two platforms for your PSEO strategy. Um, to break down how you would do this, like within Webflow, you can create a base template page for a type of CMS entry. And then within each CMS entry, you'll have custom fields that you're going to pull in, whether that's, your meta description, your headers, your description text, whatever the case may be. It's going to make it extremely easy. To create these template pages and create them at scale. You can also mass upload pages into your CMS function like within Webflow and also within WordPress. So you can actually, create a sheet, and say you create a sheet with 1,000 entries after you scrape some data, you can mass import that CSV file to pull in those dynamic fields and create all these entries at one time. This is great, especially if you're a product where maybe the content's going to be stagnant. It doesn't need to be creating a new listing automatically for like a new real estate listing, or uh, maybe it's a bit more set in stone in terms of that. This is a very easy way to do so. Um, Additionally, you can leverage Zapier, which I highly recommend to create new entries automatically within WordPress, within Webflow. So if you were to do this at scale, and again, you're not a technical person and you're not a developer or have those skills, you can actually utilize Zapier to create these pages automatically. What this could look like would be like pulling in information from an API to a sheet, or honestly, just pulling information from an API directly into Webflow. You could do either way. Um, I've said this earlier, but the key to this is obviously using automation to help you in scaling this, but making sure that you're putting your own human eyes on it to ensure that it's structured properly, grammar's working properly, uh, like basically this dynamic elements they're pulling in function as they should be, and they look appropriate for each page. So just as a call out, make sure that you check your template thoroughly, that it's gonna look appropriate, it's going to be grammatically correct, um, design's going to function properly, so on and so forth. Um, some things that you could include as examples, to how this page could be structured. Maybe you have a similar intro paragraph, and I'll give like a very finite example. So, with a mental health company that I was working with, we were looking at creating a mental health dictionary, which included uh, like a list of various search terms related to diagnoses, medications, so on and so forth, that they were aiming to rank for these different keywords, and without having to create each entry one by one by one. So in that templated like dictionary entry that we were using as part of this strategy, we had a similar intro paragraph that was a short breakdown of how to use the dictionary entry, which obviously included like medical disclaimers, etc. The dynamic data insertion, or the dynamic content insertion, which was the dictionary term, the titles, the meta descriptions, so on and so forth. And then a final call to action that was similar to across all the pages. Something I actually call out too is something that we did on this page for specifically is we actually made the call to action dynamic as well. So the button was similar, but the header text that was shown with the call to action was dynamic depending on what type of entry. So whether it was a medication or whether it was a diagnosis or whether it was something more informational, the text actually changed on those headers. So you can get pretty creative, and the platform we were using was Webflow. So again, highly recommend Webflow or WordPress to scale this and to move quickly. So looking at how to leverage PSEO for on-page optimization, I've said some of this already, but looking at optimizing your meta titles, your descriptions dynamically. So when someone's searching for search terms, the titles they're seeing within search are relevant to these dynamic pages. The descriptions that they're seeing are relevant to these pages. Um, you want to make sure that with these pages as well, you're not forgetting about the basics when it comes to on-page SEO optimization. Uh, First off, making sure that you're incorporating internal linking structure. So one thing you could do is just within your template, maybe you have some set internal links that are just the same across all of the pages. Or you could look at actually dynamically pulling in links that you'd like to include in the piece. So whether that be similar content or similar pages, um, whatever the case may be. It's important to make sure you don't overlook the internal linking structure, because internal linking is extremely important when it comes to page rankings. So you could go through, generate thousands of pages for whatever it is you're trying to do for these different long tail keywords. But if you're not including internal links, you're overlooking an element that will help these pages rank. So again, these could be set internal links that you have across all pages. These could be dynamic links that you're pulling in into the page. And the example I just described with like the dictionary, we were able to like we had a sole dictionary page that listed all the terms, and each page was linked on that dictionary. So again, those pages were being linked internally in other locations too, and on like a home page or a hub where all these pages lived. Uh, don't overlook schema markup. This is a bit more technical in nature and less on page, but I want to call this out because I often see this overlooked. Whenever you obviously want to have schema markup uh, incorporated into any of these pages. If you're not familiar with schema markup, we don't have time to delve deep into it. But basically, this is done underneath the hood, not shown on the page, which notifies the type of content to Google that this page falls into. Um, so you want to make sure that if you have you need to have schema market implemented, and when you have it implemented, that you're pulling in the appropriate data dynamically. So as the content changes, the schema markup needs to change, and needs to change dynamically for each page. And then final call out, ensure mobile friendly design. Always double check your templates and these dynamic pages on mobile phone screens. Sometimes people are surprised to learn this and they're not aware, but Google is a mobile first index platform. So what that means is that whenever Google is deciding how a page will rank and how it's indexing the page, it looks at the mobile version of each page. The reason being is that the vast majority of searches on the internet, I believe it's 75% or more, are done on a mobile phone screen. And I always like to say, like, Google's in the business of providing a positive user experience to its users, which are the searchers. Um, so that being said, Google doesn't want to send people to a design that's not optimized for mobile, that's not mobile responsive, because that's a poor user experience for their end user, which is the searcher. So just keep in mind that the mobile design for each page is extremely important, which would include like looking at spacing, text size, um, images used, all the different elements that make something mobile friendly. You want to make sure that you're checking all those boxes for these templated pages. So looking at best practices and tools. So you want to first off, may go without saying, but make sure you're pulling in high quality data. Make sure you're scraping high quality data that's accurate, depending on what your product is or what your offering is, making sure it's accurate, it's correct, um, it's structured properly. Your content will only be as good as the data that you're pulling into it and the data you provide to it. So I'd say really take the time to find a high quality data source. And then, as I mentioned earlier, using your human eyes to go through and making sure that it's structured properly, that it's normalized from a reading perspective, grammar's correct. But again, if you don't start with the high quality data that's being pulled in, um, you're the rest of it's going to be less than perfect. And not ideal in terms of the pages that are pulling in that content dynamically. Um, you want to ensure that each page also provides unique value. I talked about this, but when it comes to the content, it needs to be unique enough that first off, it's not going to be flagged as duplicate content by Google. That's going to hurt their ranking capabilities for each page. Um, you also want to make sure that it provides value as a standalone piece of content. So one to call out too is that you want to make sure there's enough text on these pages. If you're doing like a dictionary, like the example I just called out, you want to make sure there's enough text on each page that it can actually rank and that can actually perform. Um, Again, one thing to call out just like as a basic, Google is a text first search engine. The vast majority of searches that are done on Google are for Google text searches. People can do image searches or video searches, but the vast majority of searches are text based. So that being said, if your page doesn't have enough text on it, it's not going to be able to rank well. You want to make sure that you have enough text on these pages that's being pulled in dynamically so that it can be scraped and appropriately indexed. Um, Again, to call out, it's important to automate a lot of this process. That's how you scale it. I highly recommend, again, WordPress, Webflow, if you're non-technical. A tool like Zapier will be highly beneficial as well, or like Airtable. You can even use like Google Sheets. Might seem kind of basic, but Google Sheets works just as well. You can use Zapier to tie in Google Sheets to other platforms and capture that data and update sheet rows on a sheet automatically or dynamically. Um, so again, uh, leverage the automation tools to make this scale, but don't overlook the editorial portion of this. So double checking your content, ensuring that things are structured properly, and give you an example. Maybe you're pulling in a something into a sentence, but in that data, you have the like maybe the first word is capitalized, like in the data that's being provided. So it's going to look strange if you have a sentence that's then going to have a capitalized word in the middle of it. That's a pretty straightforward example, but just thinking about those things as you're building out these templates in these pages is ensuring that it's going to look appropriate and it's going to be pulled in appropriately to fit the other elements that are already in the page or in the page template. And then finally, might go without saying, but you want to monitor the performance of these continuously. So this isn't this depending on what you're doing and what your product is, but you might start with 1,000 pages you're creating, grow that to 2,000, grow that to 10,000. It really depends on what you're doing and what your company is doing. But you want to ensure that you're monitoring these pages to understand how they're performing. Um, One thing to call out too is that since these pages are templated and that they're pulling in content dynamically, if you create 1,000 pages, but you incorrectly set up schema markup on these pages, that schema markup is going to be incorrect across 1,000 pages. Or if you incorrectly set up your meta titles or your meta descriptions, the content's not pulling in correctly, that is going to be incorrect across 1,000 pages. So I really like to harp on like that editorial oversight when it comes to PSEO, because if you uh, do something incorrectly or mess something up on your templated page or on the page that this information is being pulled into, that's going to impact every single page that's being created with this method. So, so as a final call out, make sure that you're double checking descriptions, titles, schema markup, the quality of the data that's being pulled in, because if something does go wrong or something is incorrect, it's a big problem versus a single page being affected. It's affecting the number of pages that you're generating and that you're making. Um, so all that being said, I've kind of called out some of these tools throughout, but just to leave you with some tools to further explore and to um, that you can utilize as part of your PSEO strategy. First is having a quality CMS. Webflow, WordPress, I've said it again, I've harped on it. Those are the platforms I recommend. You might have a custom CMS that you have built. If maybe you have a custom built site or something along those lines, that could be another option. When it comes to automation, Airtable, Zapier, Python, if you're a bit more technical, those are all options for automating a lot of these functions. Um, when it comes to the SEO tools you're going to use, like for keyword research, monitoring performance, those elements, highly recommend SEMrush, Ahrefs, Screaming Frog is another one that I've used um, and can call out as a good one. There's various SEO tools out there, so they're not all created the same, but again, they all have similar features and elements that within them that you can use for research and reporting and monitoring. So you need to have one of those tools in place. And then finally, data sources. So I've called out some of these examples earlier, but this could be public APIs or private APIs that you've bought access to, any sort of internal databases that you've built that are internal to your business, potentially, public data sets that you can find online and scrape. Uh, Again, this is going to be unique to your practice, to your business and your product and what it is that you're doing. So, you want to find that data source that's going to work for you, and work for your business. But overall, that is what I had to cover today of just how PSEO strategy works, and some tips on how to implement this for your business. So hopefully you found this helpful, and happy to answer any questions that people have here in these last minutes.
Fantastic. As always, Ryan, thank you so much for the help in sharing these insights. Highly recommend that you all connect with Ryan for any follow-ups, book a call or information. I see the question around, will the deck be shared? We're going to send the recording out to everybody after the event, and then you can connect with Ryan directly. But if you have any questions, please feel free. You can unmute and ask them directly or put them in the chat. Go ahead.
There it is. Thanks so much, Ryan. I have a quick question for you about how you're thinking about generative search results, and if there's any way to think differently around like how you're structuring your PSEO to help show up in generative search results.
Yeah, great question. So first off, I have two things to say when it comes to generative search results. First off, to help your pages and your content appear in generative search results, a good rule of thumb is answering a question or addressing the content from various angles. So whether that be like, say maybe an example of a dictionary term. Let's say and this maybe is highly specific and maybe not relevant to your business, but
Could I give you my use case?
sure, yeah.
So I'm launching Queer Calendar, which is sort of like a queer Eventbrite plus event discovery. And so we have a ton of structured data, and we're going to be using programmatic, search for all these different cities all over the world. Yeah, I just want to make sure that when people are talking to chat, that our results will show up. I'm looking for something, gay swimming in San Diego tomorrow, right? And I want us to show up or something like that. So.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great call out. So when it comes to, again, like for pages, I often say more content, the better on pages. So like for any of these pages that you're going to be, creating dynamically, you're trying to rank, more content, the better. And answering it from multiple angles. So like, let's say, for example, and I'm again pulling this up like on the fly, but like say for you with the, like say you have a swimming event that's being held tomorrow. Maybe I'm sure you're tracking like the category type of events. Maybe if say like maybe you have swimming that's recurring often. Maybe it's an event that's taking place on a regular basis.
Right.
Then in those cases, I would maybe introduce content of like, uh, you know, uh, what to expect in swimming, like what to expect in like for one of our swimming events, or you know, uh, requirements for some of these swimming events, or what to bring, or whatever the case may be. So thinking like basically how can we address all of the concerns, questions, different angles that someone might be taking from this page and adding that type of content onto the page.
Mhm.
That's like generally speaking how you can improve your generative search results, like as a general rule of thumb. I will say this is something that I've shared just my take on it as well. So sometimes I'll get people who approach me and they'll say, I see that in Google search now we have the Gemini generative search results, and how can I show up in the generative search results in Google search, for example, specifically speaking for Google search. Um, I often tell people like you don't want to appear in those. The reason I say that is that when people are coming through and they're looking for quick fixes or quick answers to questions or quick results, they often will just look at those generative search results and exit. So, like, to give you an idea, like if someone was looking for the answer to a simple question, they're going to see that simple result, X out of the
Mhm.
search and not engage with any page or content. So I actually say that what we try to aim for when it comes to page creation is how do we create opportunities for these long tail keywords that are, first off, people are looking for a deeper dive into content, and how do we improve our rankings to show at the top underneath generative search results? Because if someone is coming through and their answer or their solution is answered within the generative solution through Gemini that Google has had, they're done. Like they've got their answer, they know what they're looking for, they're gone, you know.
Mhm.
And generally speaking, if you've utilized Google search and had the generative response, with the longer tail keywords you have, you might actually find that the generative response doesn't appear because it's so specific that the generative response doesn't show. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it. We really want to focus on the page rankings. And
Mhm.
I think people are getting a little bit caught up on how do we appear in the AI results. And I often say that people who are getting their answers or getting their information from the AI results are generally less engaged and less likely to engage with your product or your service in the first place.
That's such an interesting thing. I wonder if it's a mix because do you mind if I kind of ask you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, just because I've also heard like the people, if they do come to you, if they find you through that, that they're very, very high intent. And so you're just much more likely to convert. Like, for example, if someone's like, I'm looking for, gay swimming meetup in San Diego, and I actually I'd do that and see what the generative search does.
Yeah.
It's occurring to me to do that. Because normally if I'm talking to chat, I'm like inside of like Claude or chat or something, and um, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, so I'd say from those angles. So first off, to attempt to appear more often in generative search results, answer it from multiple angles if your goal is to appear in those search results. But
Yeah.
in my experience, people who engage with those, and for the majority of generative search responses, like with the clients we work with,
Yeah.
they are generally less engaged.
We're getting, okay, got it. Oh, yeah, in healthcare. Healthcare, it's I want to know, do I take an aspirin or not?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh,
So they're sort of like they got their answer and they're not like gonna book a call with someone to maybe is that because your
yeah,
client's mostly in healthcare?
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Or if someone's looking for like, yeah, quick answers or quick fixes, they're going to get that quick response and X out or not engage with those products.
Mm.
Yeah, I do want to answer one other question just with the time we have, just as we wrap up. I see that someone asked, when you're scraping data from public or media sources, is there a tool that scrapes just the name, company, email, phone to port into my Excel? Um, Highly recommend webscraper.io. That's a really powerful tool, especially if you're non-technical and you're looking for a easy tool to implement. Webscraper.io is a free plugin that is offered through Google Chrome. So you need to have Google Chrome and have the plugin. The first time you jump into it, you might be a bit overwhelmed because it allows you to scrape. You don't have to be technical. There is some technical elements to it and some things you have to get a handle on when you're scraping. But I highly recommend it. They also have a lot of how-to videos on their website and their product page. So highly recommend it. A great way that whenever I'm doing scraping, I'm a bit more I'm technical in nature, but I also like to move quickly and it can just speed things up a lot. So highly recommend webscraper.io if you're wanting to scrape any sort of public databases, any sort of directories, um, whatever the case may be. It's a great tool.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. As always, I also dropped into the chat for folks a link to our evaluation form for today's workshop. Please feel free to leave some feedback. Let us know about how it went. And as I mentioned, we're really happy to work with Rex Marketing and CX. We've done a few different series. So there is a link to all of the previous workshops that we've had, as well as RSVP links for the last two workshops that we have this year that will be in November. But thank you, Ryan, again. It seems you're getting lots of thanks in the chat. Again, highly recommend connecting with them. Fantastic resource for us, especially in anything SEO. We look forward to seeing you all at future startup events and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.